and welcome back to Crispy's Projects. And here is a nice 914. This is one that we've been trying to fix an exhaust leak on, and we've had to drop the engine, take the cylinder heads off, and I'm happy because the cylinder heads have come back. Let's go and have a look at them. And the guys from IDM Engineering have certainly got us out of trouble again, so let's have a look at the work. So they decided the best route to do, because of it being the exhaust, being the hot side, and the amount of material that's actually been taken out, and the implications if they were to take it would be to put this in, which is a little insert. So they've tapped this out, drilled it and tapped it to a bigger size, build this insert in, and then tapped and drilled that. So that's quite tidy. As you can see, there's not a lot of sidewall there, so they didn't want to go too far, which is more noticeable on this one because they've really had to offset that one slightly to be able to get that in. They've used precision engineering techniques to make sure that it's bang on right. I'm quite happy with that. So I gave them a bit more of a clean, blowed them out with an air line, make sure there's no dust, no residue. So now we're going to put the bit. I've got some new replacement studs. These are the OEM style, and some slightly different exhaust nuts. These have got a little bit of room for heat expansion, so hopefully that's going to help play with a slightly hotter exhaust, which could be one of the issues with it being a race cam in there. Be interesting to see what the profile is. If I get it all back together, I might have a go at measuring what the profile is on the unit. So, and we've got these are the exhaust headers. So you'd expect it to be bolted up that way if you're used to a traditional sort of style car. No, that's the bit that bolts up underneath. That's the bit that bolts to the head. So we've got these copper gaskets that actually sits inside, sits on top, and then that's what holds it together, and that's the bit that had been rocking. So we're going to get those in and at least get them on the heads before I start putting the heads back onto the engine. I think that would be the wise thing to do, just make sure they're all right. So we'll be able to screw these down by hand because they're freshly built. Right. After we've wound that in as far as we can, just get a standard nut on it. I go right down to the base and just use that to just tighten it up a bit. Sit them all in so they're all sat nice and square. You can sort of see on there that they just sit in there. So not only does that tighten up that way, pushes it down flat, but also as it's pushing, it's also pushing it to the outside. And then as you can see, these slightly more bob nuts, thread doesn't go all the way down to the bottom. It's almost like an integrated washer and a nut all in one. Just pick these up at your local motor factors, just exhaust nuts. So the main thing to work out today is whether it's a Jake Raby engine. I've no idea, other than this is a 1056 engine. So what we're going to go through, we're going to measure all the main components and get it back together. Found some interesting things on here, so let's get on and do it. So let's start with the basics. I can't work out the displacements because I've took the heads off and I don't want to disturb these. So we're just going to do the diameter. So the diameter of these bores are 96 mil. Let's have a look at these because it's running dual Webers, which we'll have a look later when we go to put it back together. That bit seems pretty much the stock, whereas that bit has been gas flowed a little bit. I'd say there it's just been gas flowed quite a bit. So there's almost nothing material wise there. So actually let me check how much sidewall there is there on the inlet. You could argue 3.3 mil, which is not a lot when you consider. Let's have a look at the other side. 4 mil. It's quite hard to tell, because I'd say that's even less. Oh well, let's measure, because there is a bit of a chamfer to it. 2.3 mil. 2.3 mil on the smallest bit compared with 4 mil. It doesn't quite match that, so that's been hand done. That's alright. Just got to make sure that that's sealed so we've got no air coming past. Let's have a look at the diameter of the valves. So I would go with, this is the very top. It's not really the seats, so that's 38 mil in diameter. That's on the exhaust, and on the inlet measure. Just can't get in there. Yeah, that's better. .44 mil in diameter on the inlet. Now let me go and get the factory book to go and have a look what the specs are. We have got Mark 2 and 3 engraved into there. All these have been measured, because the other head which I've got in actually had a CC marking work in there, so I can actually see that. So let's measure roughly what they are. It's very hard to tell 100%, isn't it? So that's 37.4 in diameter, and that one is pretty much the same. Yep, 37.4. You actually see there's some headwork gone into there. So I'm guessing the valves may be slightly oversized. You can actually see on there that there is a little bit of headwork done, stuck around there. You can actually see where tools gone in, took some material off in little places here and there. It's possibly to match the size. And let's have a little look around the actual rest of the engine just to see what we can see. So definitely it's a slightly different version. I think there's an oil pump behind there, which could be an uprated oil pump. Definitely got some new studs in there. That could be just because they've replaced. Oil cooler looks stock. Distributor looks stock. Actual points in there, may have to check those a bit later on. It is a GA engine, so as far as I know that's a 2 litre. But overall the rest of the casing, just had this resting on there. Rest of the casing looks fairly stock to me. And of course the gearbox is a 914 box, which is a derived one at 901. So overall, it's very hard to tell. So another thing that I've actually found on here is that the actual rocker arms were raised by 2 lots of washers. Fairly consistent, very repeatable. I've measured them and they're 2.7, 2.8 mil, depending on where you get them. Yeah, so it's not an engineered part. We'll call it 2.8 mil, where that actually sits on there and raises the centre point of these a little bit higher. So it's either these valves are either longer and it requires a bit more throw. The camshaft's a higher lift. So it's all things that we can do with checking when it goes back together. So talking of that, let's get it all back together. So far, what do you think? What sort of engine is it? Is it being rebuilt? Leave something in the comments below. Let me know what you think. I'm more of a water-cooled V-dub sort of guy, but yeah, I'm really getting into this air-cooled stuff. I might start leaning my way towards air-cooled stuff. Who knows? So from what we've seen so far, you tell me what you think about this engine. And if these are the sort of projects that you enjoy watching, subscribe to the channel. It should be sort of like down there somewhere. You know, it really helps out the channel, and again, costs you nothing, because we feel it's not had a lot of mileage since the rebuild. We're going to use these original rings. There's no signs of deterioration to there, just a little bit of dirt. So to get these in here, ideally you want this on a stand so you can actually guide them on. That's something that Ian Carr's actually shown in his video when he's removed these heads. So he's essentially put them up like that way so he can't see them, so he knows that they're in there, because it can do all sorts of weird things if you don't. The way I'm going to, because it's already on my little makeshift stand, I'm just going to put really good bit of high quality bearing grease just on the edges, just in two little places, not there, just to stop them from falling off, just a little bit, but not enough to actually get in the way there of the build. So do it that way, that'd be easier, won't it? Just to almost like glue them down, but with nothing that's thick enough to actually get in the way and stop it from sealing. I've already cleaned these off with a thread restorer, which is a dead simple, really cheap. It's not a tap and die set, but it's just a little nut with loads of little grooves cut in it, a little bit harder material, which is good for cleaning up threads. Make sure. Let's not pick any dust or anything up. Let's hope we don't see the insides of these for some time. Just make sure that these rings actually stay within the faces. Just sort of see them wiggle towards you, and then give them a little bit of a wiggle, and that's it. That helps balance the engine out. Just get not the bolt in there. Just do it hand tight. So the next bit to tackle is what seems to be the root of most of the oil leaks coming from these air-cooled engines, which are these little drain tubes. These little drain tubes on this motor look brand new. All the seals look new. The slightly better quality green ones, I've been doing my research, there's been lots of different variations of how people seal them up. Silicone is pretty much a no-no, which I'm quite happy with that, because these things do move and they do expand, and sealing that is not right. I don't really like silicone within engines wherever possible, because you just know that some of it's going to work its way into the oil system. So the correct way of fitting these is definitely just apply engine oil, put them on, and they just magically keep closed. But on here there's just that little bit of an intolerance I'm not too happy with. Now, one guy, well actually quite a few people, sort of said on various forums that using a Teflon based paste is the way to go. So I thought we might as well give it a go. So it's basically a PTF tape, but in liquid form, so which is that sort of thing that you put around pipes. So there's one particular brand which I think from memory is Pentax, or something very similar. Correct me if I'm wrong. I probably am. I am most of the time. So I found something here in the UK which is very, very similar, which again, this has been imported from the States, and it is for threaded metal pipe and PVC pipe and ABS pipe. So it's called True Blue by Rector Seal. It is for portable water, natural gas, a wide variety of fluids and liquids. It's supposed to be able to be petrol proof, oil proof, all the rest of it, and it's quite an interesting paste. Now, I've built up the other side a good couple of days ago, and I've left it just to sort of see how it sits. So this comes off like a paste, very much like a silicone, works its way in, and you're supposed to leave it 24 hours before putting any fluids on it or reapplying and stuff. And this basically looks like it dries into a clay, which is quite interesting. So I've just tried moving it, so it's still flexible. You will get that little bit of vibration. This was leaking out oil like you wouldn't believe from those pipes. So I'm not going to make it any worse. So how I'm going to apply this is, you see it's sort of like a little blue paste. apply some on both sides, put on the correct size seal and just spin it round. So spin it round is going to draw it into. On the other side, same again. Just to get it fully sealed round. And then I'm going to apply a bit on the actual outside. And this, if it gets into the engine oil, it should dissolve. Looking at the sort of like the data sheet, what information I've got, there's a fair amount. I'll clean off your fingers, and then we're just going to place them in. One side is slightly bigger than the other to make sure you get that right in without getting too much on the inside. And then just as we go in, give it a little bit of a turn. And then just give it a little turn while it's in, just to help it settle. You can actually see how I'm just going to clean it off from there because I want it fairly clean and tidy. And then we go, just give it a little bit of a turn. I'll show you why I've come to this conclusion. So on the smaller one, really hard to see, but that is actually spinning round. So there's no real strength to it. Which is on the inside. That's a little bit tighter, but yeah, engine oil can still pass through that. There's no real, nothing there. Another point why this is a performance build, or it's been uprated at least, we're still trying to verify that, are these rods. Because these rods are slightly thicker diameter, more solid, non-original ones. So apparently these are then made to order and then cut down to size. Then these inserts put in, but they are actually hollow. The oil comes up to there, so I believe they are uprated as well. So with these ones, as I'm reliably told, which are some of the J. Raby uses and other people. There's not just one person building these engines. There's lots of people building engines. These push rods don't have the same characteristics when it comes to getting hot for heat expansion. They don't need the same valve clearances. So what we're going to do is pretty much all the information I've picked up on is set all these to 0 lash. So not too tight and not be able to get a feeler gauge in there, which is different from the factory specs, but this isn't a factory engine, it's been built slightly different. Now I did take valve adjustment just sort of guides to start off with, and it seemed that a lot of the exhaust ones had 0 lash. Actually 2 of them had 0 lash and 2 of them were really tight and they needed backing off, so they may have been slightly open, which might have been causing some of the running issues as well. And then all the inlets sort of varied on how much gap they had. So some had quite a lot of a gap. These are different lengths. They are different slightly because they're different lengths. They tally up slightly differently. So you got to make sure that they. Let's get the right way around. Got to make sure that the balls actually sit in the right place. Got to make sure that the spring, and there's 2 washers either side, that spring. That just keeps them all tight in the right place. Those notches need to sit to the bottom because the little spring keeps in. Adjustments are all the way off. Just in case we have got them mixed up. Don't think I have. Screwdriver just to lift it up into the. You can actually see that they go in and home. So we'll just get those started. Just nipped up by hand. Tighten them all to 10 Newton meters, which isn't a lot. That's about right for one of those. I've looked up the factory specs and I can't see anything written down for them. So if you know that they're slightly different, please let me know and I'll adjust it. But 10 Newton meters, I'm happy with. Next up, this spring. The spring goes one way, and they're the bits that essentially push the tubes in. So it's in there. Let's have them right. Should basically build up a tolerance with this clay compound as it pretty much turns out as it dries. We still don't want it to vibrate loose or push loose for any particular reason, which can still happen. So get those in. Sit inside those little notches. Talking about setting these up, so wherever that's sat now, that's on a compression. That's not. I think that just starting to be. So again, I haven't got spark plugs in. Turn it, so because that's definitely down, I know that that's not on, so I'm going to set that to a 0. So you'd normally put feeler gauge in, just be able to push it in and feel the resistance just to check how thick they are. It's just on there. I don't want any real resistance on there, so we can just move that a little bit, and that's as far as we're going. Start feeling a bit of resistance on that screw. That's pushing that down, so too much. This is all going to help reduce the valve train noise, the clatter that's off it. So again on this one, do the same again. Good, so it's just touching and then back it off. So I'm just going to back it off a little bit more, quarter of a turn. And I can feel the movement in that, so I'm going to turn it back, quarter of a turn. And this is more about feel than anything else. You can just feel. There's quite a bit of movement there. So just going to tighten it down till it just nips up. So if we turn it another quarter turn, we know that that's compressing down on there. We don't want that. We can actually hear the click, so we just want to take that a little bit up. There's got to be a good place to measure. Okay, I'm going to get it from the edge of there. Zero that there. Not very scientific at all. So we're looking at about 9mm of lift. Zero there. Again, about 9mm of lift. Okay, interesting. So they both lift around the same amount, which doesn't seem to be a massive amount. This tinware's getting me really confused because I seem to have a piece left over. I'm referring to Haynes, which is normally quite good, particularly of this sort of decade of manual, and I still can't work out where that one little piece goes. New Saturday is probably worth know exactly where that goes when you're shouting. But at the moment, I had no idea. I was going to rush through, get all the tinware back on because it was simple enough, and then get the engine in before it goes dark. And it's just not happening. I've sussed it. So there's two plates, which you already knew this already. I didn't. Well, I did. Just forgot about it. Haynes manual did more or less point in the right direction, but didn't really make a lot of sense. Just looking at the pictures, and it's an exploded view of front and back bits, sort of like together in the same picture. So there's two bits that actually sit underneath this back bit of cowling to help direct the air that goes across the cylinders down. So it's one of those ones. So I'm going to get these back together, and in a minute or half, hopefully the engine's going to be ready to go back in, he says. Well, that's that all back together. So for now, I've got some bags inside there just to stop anything falling in the inlet. That's where all the tinware is actually tight, screwed down, and in the right order. Well, it pretty much looks like it. So it's ready to go back in. I've had to replace one or two screws that hadn't been used. So less talk, more work. See, these are very close to marrying up, as are the ones in the front. So I'm just going to have to lower it down a little bit further on the jacks. That's me done for tonight. I tell you, I've had enough. All I've got to do is put the road wheels on, jack the car up, but you'll be able to see how low I've had to get it to be able to get the support and gearbox support to actually marry up size wise. So that's where you've got to take the wheels off now. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the first video when I pulled them out, but big studs that actually go through to the support of the engine on the engine cradle. There's one either side. They only had one washer on it, which was very small, and that's concaved. It's going through a little, I quite a larger hole. Just completely the wrong size washer, and there wasn't a washer on the other side, so they were either planning to take the engine out rather quickly. I just didn't really care. I have no idea. But I've put bigger washers on for now. Okay, I'm coming now. Do you want to come and say hello to everybody? Sorry, being told off, waiting for dinner. So that's pretty much as far as I'm going to get. So if that's the sort of thing you like watching, you know, remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and the bell notification will always tell you when the next video comes out. And to be honest, I've had enough for today. So thanks for watching this far in. As you can see, it's quite dark. I'm hungry. We'll just build this one better. But thanks for watching. Share, like, subscribe, and ta-ra for now.